The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Everyone had risen to their feet as Judge Monica Carter entered. Everyone except for one man. Logan Pierce, a billionaire with more money than morals, sat comfortably in his chair, smirking as if the rules didn't apply to him. The silence was deafening. Whispers spread through the room like wildfire. Was he really refusing to stand for a judge? Judge Carter paused, her sharp gaze locking onto him. She had seen arrogance before, but this was something else. Logan leaned back, arms crossed, as if daring her to react. The tension in the room was unbearable. Would she ignore his blatant disrespect, or would she put him in his place? Then with a calm but commanding voice, she spoke. And what she said next didn't just leave Logan speechless. It left the entire courtroom in shock. Judge Carter's voice was steady, but there was an undeniable edge to it. Mr. Pierce, I don't believe you misunderstood court protocol. So tell me, is there a reason you refuse to stand? Logan's smirk widened. Respect is earned, Your Honor, he said, his tone dripping with arrogance. A few gasps rippled through the courtroom. Even his own attorney shifted uncomfortably beside him. Judge Carter didn't flinch. She simply studied him, her expression unreadable. But those who knew her could see the gears turning. She wasn't the type to let disrespect slide, especially not in her courtroom. The bailiff glanced at her, waiting for a command, but she held up a hand. This wasn't about power. It was about principle. The room was dead silent as she leaned forward slightly. Mr. Pierce, she said, her voice calm but firm, I suggest you think very carefully about your next move. Logan chuckled, shaking his head. Think carefully. About what? His voice oozed confidence, the kind that came from knowing he could buy his way out of most situations. I don't see a law that says I have to stand. The room was frozen, all eyes on Judge Carter. Some were waiting for her to explode, others for her to back down. But she did neither. Instead, she reached for a file on her desk, flipping through it slowly. You know, Mr. Pierce, I did my homework on you, she said casually. You have a history of bending the rules. Bribery allegations, labor violations, and let's not forget the tax fraud case that somehow disappeared. Logan's smirk faded just a little. His attorney shifted beside him, whispering something under his breath, but Logan ignored him. None of that has anything to do with today, he shot back. Judge Carter leaned forward. It has everything to do with today. Because the way you operate, thinking the rules don't apply to you. It's the same reason you're sitting there instead of standing where you should be. A murmur spread through the crowd. Even the jury members exchanged glances. Logan exhaled sharply, clearly irritated now. Is this a courtroom or a lecture hall? Judge Carter's expression didn't change. That depends. Are you here to follow the law or rewrite it to fit your ego? Logan didn't answer, but the tension in his jaw spoke for him. He was used to intimidating people, making them second-guess themselves. But Judge Carter wasn't flinching. From the back of the room, a reporter scribbled notes furiously. The cameras weren't rolling, but this moment, this showdown, would be tomorrow's headline. Logan Pierce, the billionaire who thought he was untouchable, was being challenged in a way he never expected. His attorney whispered again, this time more urgently. Logan, don't make this worse. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Logan's face. He wasn't used to being the one under pressure. And the way Judge Carter was looking at him, like she already knew how this would end, it was unsettling. She tapped her gavel lightly, her voice calm but firm. Since standing is apparently beneath you, let's proceed. The trial hadn't even begun, but everyone knew one thing for sure. Logan Pierce was no longer in control of this room. And that realization, it changed everything. The room felt tighter, the walls seeming to close in around Logan as the weight of the moment settled on him. Judge Carter wasn't just another official he could brush off. She was different. Calculated, unshaken. And worst of all, she wasn't playing by the unspoken rules he had relied on his whole life. His fingers tapped impatiently on the table, his confidence now masking something else. Frustration. Fine, he muttered, adjusting his tie. Let's get on with it. Judge Carter didn't react, didn't even acknowledge his attempt to regain control. Instead, she turned her attention to the prosecution. Proceed with opening statements. The attorney stood, clearing his throat. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about accountability. His voice was firm, echoing through the silent courtroom. Mr. Pierce believes he's above the law, that he can manipulate systems, intimidate people, and escape consequences. He glanced at Logan, whose jaw tightened. But today, Logan smirked, but there was a flicker of unease in his eyes. He had been in court before, but it was always a formality. Just another game where he controlled the board. But this felt different. Judge Carter wasn't rattled, and the prosecution wasn't backing down. For the first time, he wasn't sure how this would play out. Then, just as the attorney was about to continue, the courtroom doors swung open. A woman in a sharp navy blue suit walked in, her heels clicking against the floor. She carried herself with quiet authority, her presence demanding attention. Logan's expression darkened the moment he saw her. The prosecutor turned, surprised. Your Honor, I'd like to request a brief recess. Judge Carter studied the woman before nodding. 15 minutes. As soon as the courtroom cleared, Logan shot out of his seat, his usual composure cracking. What the hell is she doing here? He hissed at his attorney. The woman stepped forward before his lawyer could respond. Good to see you too, Logan, she said, her voice cool, but edged with something sharper. It's been a while. Judge Carter remained at the bench, watching the exchange with keen interest. There was something about Logan's reaction, genuine discomfort, even anger. This wasn't just another business rival or legal opponent. This was personal. Logan straightened his tie, his confidence forced. You don't belong here, he said through clenched teeth. The woman tilted her head, unfazed. Oh, but I do. You see, the prosecution just added me as a witness. She let the words sink in before continuing. I know exactly how you operate, Logan, and I'm here to make sure this time you don't walk away. The tension in the air was electric. Logan had expected a fight, but not this. Not her. For the first time in his life, he didn't have a plan. And as the judge watched with quiet intensity, one thing was clear. Logan Pierce was about to face the one thing he feared most. The truth. Logan's grip tightened on the edge of the table. His usual arrogance was gone, replaced by something colder, panic. He turned to his attorney, but before he could speak, the woman stepped closer. You always thought you were untouchable, she said, her voice steady. But not today. Judge Carter tapped her gavel lightly. Mr. Pierce, I suggest you return to your seat. Logan exhaled sharply, forcing himself to sit. The courtroom filled again, and the tension was unbearable. The woman took the witness stand, her eyes locked onto Logan's. State your name for the record, the prosecutor said. She straightened. Olivia Hart. A ripple of recognition spread through the room. Olivia Hart, former CFO of Pierce Industries. A woman who had disappeared from the public eye after abruptly resigning 2 years ago. Logan's expression darkened. This is ridiculous. Judge Carter didn't even look at him. You will remain silent, Mr. Pierce. The prosecutor stepped forward. Ms. Hart, can you explain your connection to the defendant? She nodded. I worked for Logan Pierce for 8 years. I handled financial operations, oversaw major deals, and covered up things I shouldn't have. Murmurs erupted in the courtroom. The judge let them settle before gesturing for Olivia to continue. At first, I thought it was just business, pushing limits, bending rules. But then I saw the truth. Money wasn't enough for Logan. He wanted control. He threatened employees, silenced whistleblowers, and buried evidence that should have put him in prison years ago. She hesitated, then turned to face him fully. Including me. Logan's jaw clenched. You're lying. The prosecutor didn't flinch. Ms. Hart, are you saying Mr. Pierce threatened you? She exhaled. Not just me. My family. That's why I left. The room was dead silent. Even Logan's attorney seemed rattled. Then Olivia reached into her bag and pulled out a small flash drive. She held it up for everyone to see. I kept everything, she said simply. Judge Carter leaned forward. Bailiff, collect the evidence. For the first time in his life, Logan Pierce had no way out. No bribes, no threats, no deals. As the bailiff retrieved the drive and handed it to the prosecution, Logan finally understood. This wasn't just another legal battle. This was the endgame. But just as the prosecutor plugged the drive into a laptop, Logan did something no one expected. He laughed. Low, quiet at first, then louder. Judge Carter raised an eyebrow. Something funny, Mr. Pierce. Logan leaned back, shaking his head. You think I didn't prepare for this? He turned to Olivia, his smirk returning. You're not as smart as you think. Before anyone could react, the power in the courtroom flickered, then cut out completely. Gasps filled the darkness. A second later, emergency lights kicked in, bathing the room in dim red glow. And in the chaos, Logan Pierce was gone. For a moment, no one moved. Then Judge Carter's voice cut through the chaos. Seal the exits. Bailiffs and officers rushed into action, but it was too late. Logan Pierce had vanished. Olivia sat frozen, gripping the empty space where the flash drive had been. He planned this, she whispered. The prosecutor's face was grim. He had an escape route ready. Minutes later, security footage confirmed it. A power surge, a staged disruption, and Logan slipping through a back corridor. He had played everyone until the very last second. Judge Carter exhaled, her expression unreadable. Issue a warrant. This isn't over. The courtroom slowly emptied, whispers filling the halls. Olivia stared at the judge. Do you think they'll find him? Judge Carter gave a small, knowing smile. Men like Logan always run, but they always leave a trail. And somewhere out there, Logan Pierce was realizing he was finally out of moves.